Welcome to Carl and Heather Present,
the podcast where we dive into the insights, challenges, and humor of being married to someone who is nothing like you.
Are you ready?
Let's go.
Oh, don't you know it's Carl and Heather Present Marriage Podcast.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back again to another episode of the Carl and Heather Present Podcast. Today's special guests are Corie and Matt Weathers. Welcome, Corie and Matt.
Okay.
Babe, tell us about Corie and Matt
I'm going to
Weathers.
tell you about them. First of all, we have been longtime friends. That's the most important thing. They are dear friends to us. We've been friends for, 30 years now.
That seems like a long time.
Seems like a long time. But they have been married for 26 years. Can't believe that. You have two grown children, right? 21, Aiden's 21, Jackson 18. And you're officially empty nesters as of a month ago. Woohoo!
Yep.
Love that.
Yeah.
Okay,
Listen to that
Corie.
silence.
Corie is an author, speaker on leadership and studies morale in the military culture. Matt is an Army chaplain and Army strategist and is currently assigned to R North, which oversees, just FYI, the deployments to the border, National Guard to domestic cities, and any other mission that would land in the U.S. rather than overseas. They currently live in San Antonio since this summer and will most likely move again next summer. And Corie says she thinks that they've moved 9 times in the military alone through 3 deployments, 2 to Afghanistan, 1 to Poland, and they've had other military separations. For fun, this was super cool to hear about you, Corie. She just took up the cello, playing the cello. Cool. And Matt plays video games with the boys. They love art, music, travel, and are now figuring out kind of fun things to do together as empty nesters. So welcome, Matt and Corie.
Thanks.
Hey,
And
thanks for having us.
Just for information, my video games are more tough than her learning the cello. So just set the bar.
I was going to say that when Carl said cool for the cello, I was going to say that's cool that you play video games.
I know.
I'm actually jealous of him because I've tried.
I mean, are you self-teaching? Are you teaching yourself? Not the video
This is
games.
Corie.
This is Mary. Hello.
First of all, I just want to say I'm jealous of his ability to play video games because I try and there's now too many buttons. And I get sick with all of like the movements. And so I get like halfway through. And so we've kind of are starting this new arrangement on the video game side where the boys can like online create a chair for me to sit in where I can put on the headphones and chat, but not play the game. I'm just sitting in a chair in some room somewhere while they are all gaming. So we're working on that. But no, I am self-teaching. On the cello. I've had a couple of instructors and this latest move kind of set me back a little bit, but I think it was during COVID where I just was like, I've loved it. I've loved the cello itself my whole life, but I was like one of those kids that got a violin when I was a kid.
Yeah.
And I was like always looking at the cello section. And so Matt was really the one that during a deployment and also during COVID, suddenly he sent me an email from Poland that like, hey, I have rented a cello for you. You need to go pick it up.
Oh,
So that was kind of the nudge that I needed to go, you know what? Everybody's got, I hope that I have 10 years and it takes 10 years to get decent at something. So let me just do what I can do.
I don't even remember doing that, but I feel better about myself already.
Pat on the back. To you, Pat.
Way to go, self.
you're scoring points and don't even know it. That's
I know, right?
high level right there.
Gold Globetrotter life.
It is probably one of the reasons why you have become a lieutenant colonel in the United States Army, which thank you for your service, brother.
Mm-hmm.
You're worth it.
I appreciate it so much.
That's
and
amazing.
Corie, thank you for your service as a military wife. One of the reasons we want to have you guys on the podcast is because you guys have been influential and very helpful in the spiritual lives of soldiers who are serving the United States Army. And we're so grateful for that. But there's just as there's wars all around the world, there's a battle that's going on in the spiritual lives of soldiers, just like all of us. And you guys have been there serving and helping to win that battle. And so it's an honor to talk to you guys tonight.
Yeah.
We want to get to know you pretty quickly. I'm going to do this rapid fire question. Are you ready?
Ready.
I'm going to just ask you some fun questions and try to respond as genuinely and as authentically as possible. Who's strongest?
No, that's not one.
Oh, okay.
Emotionally?
Okay, we'll go. No, like I do think Matt and Corie Weathers are the world champions of continuing to look young.
Yes.
So that's been great. Who's more likely to cry during a movie? Corie.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
What's the first meal you crave when you're finally back home from a deployment?
Steak.
Steak is good, but you get steak over there. I think food related, it's just to go to the grocery store, just to go and pick out anything,
Yeah.
right? Because
Okay.
you don't get a
Nice.
choice of anything for a year. And when you can just go to the grocery store, like cereal with fresh milk, I'll say that. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, and I would also add coffee because, well, I mean, there's been a couple. When he was in Poland, he had access to, I think, some decent coffee.
Yeah.
But sometimes, like, not having a good cup of coffee that you can have at home in your slippers, you know.
Yeah. The first deployment, we were straining the coffee through shirts to make coffee.
Oh
So
gosh.
it was awesome.
Hey,
You gotta make it work. Oh,
Come
Don't
on.
you can ask him also about the monkeys in Afghanistan.
Yeah.
That was a fun one for me. So
No.
oh wow. Okay.
We may or may not have thrown a monkey off a mountain.
Oh,
Continue.
gosh.
Just continue.
Valid.
Well, he
Okay.
attacked somebody.
Who gives the better pep talks, a chaplain or a therapist?
me, I would
Okay.
say.
That's a
Well, it
lot.
depends on who the audience is.
Hmm. Yeah.
Depends
Okay.
on who the audience is.
All right,
Matt is an
describe-
incredible motivational speaker, I think.
describe your best date night. What's a perfect date night for you guys?
Right now,
Yeah.
right now it's like TV dinners, and I'm in my chair and she's on the couch.
I love it.
No, we fell in love going to see jazz. So our perfect date night is if we could go to a jazz club and just sit and listen to a live jazz, that would be ideal.
That's
Nice.
awesome. That's awesome. Okay. Who's more likely to forget to pack something important before a trip or a deployment?
Corie actually forgot her suitcase once. So we're living like 45 minutes north of Austin Airport, driving down there, 15 minutes in, she goes, "Oh my, I forgot to put my suitcase in the car." Right? So
Yes.
All right,
But we
what-
kind of have this standing thing of like, he knows that I will, if I don't pack something, then it's an opportunity to go shopping.
she shops,
So,
she buys something on
Hey.
every trip.
That's a
It's
good.
good.
I like that. I like that.
I always like to buy some shoes when I'm going on a trip
yeah.
because then if they're cool shoes and people say, where'd you get those shoes? You're like, well, I took a trip.
Yeah.
And anyway.
It's true. It's
Uh-huh.
true. I just got some shoes in the mail today for the trip on Saturday. So
Hey, there you go.
Yeah.
There you go.
Okay, last couple questions. What's one word your sons would use to describe your family?
neurotic.
Enough said. Love
Well,
that.
I mean, when you are two kids of a therapist and a chaplain, there's a lot of lectures that we've had to learn how to turn down the
Yeah.
lectures. And
Yeah.
Yeah.
We watch them tune out. All of
no,
a sudden,
well, that's a really good parenting point because I love to make a good speech.
Yes.
It's just really get in there and think it through and like points A, B, and C. I mean, I love that. And I'd say 90% have gone to waste. They're good kids. They're picking it up somewhere, but it ain't through these speeches that I'm making. So that's funny.
You need to do like Bill Pullman, get the bullhorn and the little thing. Today is your Independence Day.
Yes. Yes. Okay. Last one. Who's more likely to fall asleep mid conversation after a long day, a chaplain or a therapist?
chaplain.
Okay. Okay.
If I'm doing this, like it's bad.
Yeah.
It's
Okay.
bad.
Okay.
I'll keep an eye on you for the
Okay.
rest of the podcast.
No, we're
just to make
good.
sure we
I'm
don't lose you.
engaged.
Mhm.
I can be that way too, though.
Mhm.
I think it's because we're seasoned.
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or I like to be entertained too. I like to be amused.
For sure. For sure. Well, okay. So you guys you share a lot in common, but you probably have a lot of differences. So I'm just curious with what you do. I know there are some similarities in the helper piece of it with a therapist and with the chaplain, but then I could also see, the careers being two very different directions in some ways. And so there are probably a lot of differences. And so what would you say as a couple, what are your biggest differences as a couple?
I think the first thing that comes to my mind that I think a lot of people may not know is that sounds very clinical, but a therapist has does have the duty to protect. So I still, as a therapist, have to report suicidal ideation, homicide, just any of those like duty to report, abuse, children or elderly, that sort of thing. Whereas a chaplain has a priestly confidentiality. So he literally cannot disclose anything that anyone says, regardless of even it being a dangerous thing. Now, there's ways that as chaplain, you can work with people to help them self-disclose, but that's like a big, huge difference is that I always say, like, I am HIPAA compliant, but I have a duty to report, whereas he does not. And that's something we try to tell a lot of, especially military couples out there, that you can go and find mental health care, but if you can also go to a chaplain. And that's really important on the military side because there's such a stigma associated with getting help that it helps a lot of people know that I can go to a chaplain and that information is not going to get to command or anybody else that I was reaching out for help if that was something they were concerned about. So anything?
Yeah. So biggest difference between the two of us is she feels people's feelings and I don't. So so she has deep empathy and she can actually like put herself into that person's shoes and really understand that feeling. And there's a lot of times that I'll look at her and she'll be like, oh, they're feeling this. And I'm like, really? Like, what does that feel like? Like, I'm like, I don't know. Right. Because it doesn't register with me. But we both get to the same spot in working with people often because we leverage different strengths. We do a lot of stuff with Gallup Strength Finder. And by leveraging those strengths and respecting one another's differences. So for instance, with the boys, if we're doing that parenting, it's kind of always figuring out like, is this a you or a me moment? Who needs to leverage their strength? Is this kind of okay, we're going to soothe and we're going to, help kind of smooth over this? Or is this a grow up moment? And it's kind of like, hey, like, how'd that go for you, kid? So, and I think that also because of the realms that we move in, we actually kind of have begun to, that Venn diagram has started to overlap. So for as much as Corie interacts with military officers and non-commissioned officers, she can flip that switch and really just kind of like, I don't know what the word is. You can just kind of like present as empathic, but not like bleeding heart. Does that make sense? Like you can identify what they're feeling, but not like go like deeply into it to a point where they would feel uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. I think a lot of what I do, because from a counselor perspective, there's a traditional therapist role. But now, because of being a military spouse and moving as much as we've moved, at one point I had 5 licenses in 5 different states. And there had to be a different way to have a career. And so that evolved and I pivoted to leadership development. And we do marriage retreats sometimes. And how do I turn the therapy or the clinical side into teaching and instructing? And so what Matt's saying is I've really learned to feel the feelings that are in the room, regardless of who is in that room, and speak from a place of truth while also acknowledging and validating what those feelings are. And of course, in the force today, there's a lot of feelings and there's a lot of stuff that's going on. So how do we speak life into those that we are in front of? And I think that's the shared mission that we started from the very beginning. When we knew you guys at Gardner Webb, we had no plans of going into the military. We had a completely different idea of what our life would look like.
I had an awesome goatee, so.
I don't know if it was awesome, but it was there. It was there.
I did.
But I think that when we decided to come in, we came in together as a team and said we would come in as a team. And how do we serve these families as a team separately, but also together? And that's something that's been important to us ever since. Wherever we find ourselves, putting that person in front of us is the most important thing and tending to their needs.
I see.
I have a question that's a little off the page, but I just wanted to understand a little bit more about this as it relates to you guys gifting and then how it intersects with the military, because you've got deep empathy and things like that, which we talk a lot about, and kind of the culture at large today. Everyone's going to therapy that needs it, and some just because it's what everybody's doing. It's almost like a trend. Now, on the other side, the military culture is a real suck it up buttercup kind of a culture where we have things like drill sergeant, and everyone knows what a drill sergeant is, and what a drill sergeant is not is somebody who's trying to be in touch with their feelings because they want to increase your capacity to fight enemies. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And so
Yeah.
I think they're two very important dichotomies.
Mhm.
But how do you navigate those dual necessary dichotomies when you're ministering to somebody who is a soldier? That's their
Yeah.
job,
Right.
is to be able to, I got to push this down, at least for now,
Yeah.
so that I can do something else. I don't even know if my question makes sense, but I'm sure you've wrestled with that.
I think it does. It's one of it's the first two steps in learning emotional intelligence. The first one is know what's going on in yourself. And
Yeah.
the second one is either be able to regulate it or be able to communicate it well and effectively. And unlike
That's great.
IQ, EQ, you can actually raise up. And so what's interesting is we all have feelings. I tell people when we do marriage retreats, men are mostly born with 4: mad, sad, glad, and anxious. Sad and anxious are uncomfortable, and I get angry about that. So it's usually mad or happy, right? I'm either glad or mad, right? Whereas Corie has that Crayola box that's got like 220 crayons with a sharpener in the back, right? I still don't know what chartreuse is, but it's there. So a lot of it is teaching young or late teens, early 20 somethings in the process of basic training, you can manage your emotions.
Mm.
And there's not a lot of that training and teaching that goes on out in what we would call the civilian world of emotions are not a bad thing. You just can't like let them run your life. And in fact, if you use them the right way, you'll walk farther, you'll carry more, you'll run harder. You do what you do for the love of the people around you. So you really get in touch with some very deep emotive feelings that can bring you to tears at times.
Yeah.
But then when it's not the appropriate time and place, you go, okay, well, I've got to take that and put the needs of the others and the needs of the mission ahead of all that. And in that, I think it's very similar to therapy, because then you're going, okay, like it's not bad to feel. You just need to feel when is it appropriate and how do you leverage it the right way? And then great leaders then automatically understand other people feel those things, and I need to help them the way somebody helped me to manage those emotions. Yeah.
That is great. That's so wise.
That's so good.
And I think the only other thing that I would add to that is, I know when we first came in almost 20 years ago, there would be these phrases that would kind of circulate within the military community of things like empathy gets people killed, right? Like when you're on the battlefield, or if you're a sniper, if you're somebody that's on mission, you don't have time to think about how the other person on the other side is going to feel or how that's going to impact somebody's family. You've got a task to do.
Right.
And so you can't bring so many feelings into it. And yet, especially during that time when we had such rapid deployments all the time, people were coming home, service members were coming home and having a very difficult time reintegrating at home, because now we have to find all of our feelings again.
Yeah.
And so teaching, like Matt was saying, teaching people how to be the self-aware and to know what you're feeling and when to compartmentalize that and when to self-regulate, and also when to turn it down or turn it off to do another task. But I would also say, as I work with leaders now, it is a lot of validating their emotions and giving them permission to have an emotion, especially when they're at home and they're at work every day and they're behind a desk, is not one of those times that we should shut down our emotions. And so,
when do you leverage it, and in what ways is it appropriate?
which is also important at home, right? And in marriage too, of how do we know when emotions are helpful and when are they becoming destructive? And when are we focused more on ourselves and what we're feeling versus are we listening and being curious to what our spouse or our kids are saying?
Yeah. That's so good. So good. Okay. So let me ask you this. When, Corie, you feel like your workload is heavy and you may feel like, well, that's every day kind of thing, or emotionally draining, and or maybe at the same time, Matt, you've experienced a deployment where you guys are not, you're not together. How do you stay connected in those times, or how do you reconnect when you come back from something like that? To not like feel this drift or have this chasm created in your marriage. How do you stay together?
Third this week.
Oh yeah. Huh?
About this week is an anniversary. So.
Oh yeah. Well, I wanted to say this. You can talk about that, but I'll talk about this other thing.
Okay.
You cool? Ready? And scene. All right. So the two things that came to mind easily were I'm an extrovert. Corey's an introvert. I'm becoming more of an introvert the more I like that meter of being able to tolerate. We now get to the weekends and we're like, hey, things, not people. So where was I going with that? Anyhow,
Opposite, introverts.
when I was in Poland, we had this big time difference, 6-7 hours. So it wasn't always an ideal time to call. She's dealing with both the kids. I'm in Poland, and I'm literally locked in to like 2 or 3 buildings that are like in the middle of the largest city in Poland. So I'm living my best life ever with Uber Eats. And
Yeah.
she's like in Snowmageddon in Texas with 2 kids that have COVID. So drastically different. But we decided there was a journal. It's an online journal called One Day or Day One. Either way, look it up, Day One. And you can write in it at different times. You can put pictures and links and all kinds of stuff. You can really format it however you want. And so we started writing in that. And what was great for me was that I would get out my drafts. And then whenever she got up or wanted to read it, she could read it. She didn't have to write it, but she wrote in it. And we would just take turns. And that way we actually grew together with a shared journal that, once I got back home, we printed it out and it's right there in my nightstand.
You can print it out into a book.
Yeah.
And I think what it did for him as an extrovert is that writing helped him. When he says drafts, it helped him, for extroverts, the first thing that they're processing out loud, we call that our first draft.
Oh.
And so sometimes we have to cue each other, like, this is just my first draft. Like, so don't take it and run with it. Because as an introvert, I would take the first thing that he would say and not hear anything after that, because I'm like, I cannot believe he said that. Like, I cannot, my brain is like thinking the worst thing because of it being a first draft. And so as an extrovert, writing gave him the ability to figure out his third draft. By the time he was writing it in the journal, he could edit it. He could figure out what he was trying to say.
Yeah.
So by the time I woke up and read what he wrote, it was his third draft. It was a better draft than when we would just communicate back and forth. And that taught us that the extroverts writing can be really powerful for an extrovert to get to that third draft a little faster. Whereas writing for me as an introvert, my first draft is stuck in my head. And I think that I have had a full conversation with him. And I'm like, don't you remember when I said such and such? And he's like, you never said that to me. And I was like, but we had a whole conversation in my head. Right. Yeah. So writing for me got it out of my head where I was communicating and forcing me to find my words. So that was definitely really helpful during the deployment.
And then there's a topic that Corie came up with called sacred spaces. And it's this idea that in each person's life, you have sacred spaces that other people are not going to experience with you. And I mean, you see that when people first get married, they've lived separate lives for 2 decades at least. And I mean, hopefully you're like at least 20 something, right?
Yeah.
No judgment against, anyhow. So you have these separate lives and you only find out the places you shouldn't step in one another's lives too eagerly. They say like fools rush in where angels fear to tread. So there's that idea of how do we understand one another's sacred spaces that we develop from time apart and how do we clearly articulate that to the other person so that they treat it gingerly?
Yeah. Because there was definitely moments that he's experienced during deployment that were traumatic, that were significant, that I wasn't there for. I know about it. I've heard about it, but I wasn't walking with him when he experienced that. Similarly, when I was at home trying to raise kids by myself, there were moments where I hit the end of myself and then had to keep going. And for me, that was significant. And that's not just for military families. I think we hear from couples all the time if there's a miscarriage, if there's a death in the family. These moments can be moments of deep sorrow that very few people can understand unless you were there, or there are incredible moments of joy where that sunrise was the Lord speaking to you in a way that you had been waiting for. And that's really hard to articulate to someone else. And so this sacred space language was what we used to go, hey, this is a sacred space. Like, I need you to tread lightly. Don't need you to fix it. I don't need you to ask me a million questions about it. I just need you to know that it was significant for me. And I just need you to sit here with me as I talk about it. And so I think it also releases people from the frustration of when you have gone through something like a miscarriage, that you desperately need to connect with other people in order to heal through that. finding someone else who has a shared sacred space that understands what that feels like helps you with that healing. But taking it to everybody in the world, you're not going to get the same response that helps you heal, and to know that that's okay.
Yeah. Wow.
Thank you so much.
And
That thing you said about the first draft, third draft,
yeah.
that was, the metaphor is always the gold. If you can find the picture and the metaphor to help somebody understand a concept, that's gold to them.
Yeah.
That was gold to me because that is me. I say my first draft out loud with a lot of passion, like it's etched in stone. I believe it's the first draft, and it's totally open to debate. But sometimes the way I say it to Heather, she interprets it as like, "Geez, we have to do this now." And I don't think that at all. But and wasn't that so good?
Yes, absolutely.
We got that. Full disclosure, we got that from Brene Brown.
Yeah.
And in her concept, and she puts a word in front of it that describes that it's not a good draft.
So that we won't say out loud. But it's
Yeah.
helpful when you're in a passionate conversation and you just need to be able to, or for those of you out there who don't want your spouse to fix it, right?
Yeah.
You just want them to listen. To be able to go, this is just my first draft. I will eventually get there. I will eventually figure it out. But I just want you to know this is where I'm at right now.
Yeah. So then how would you, you kind of gave an example of this, but I would say, ask, how would you encourage couples who might feel like they're in a demanding season? Not everybody who listens, most people who listen will not say, well, my spouse is not deployed or in the military, but they would still have, I love that you mentioned miscarriage because I think that's a common thread a lot of women and men can relate to that have happened. But how would you encourage someone who is a couple who is in a demanding season of life, whether that means work or things going on with extended family or, issues with kids, whatever? How would you encourage them to stay connected and to not drift apart?
So about 2 years ago, 2020? It was 2023. I had a significant back issue. Like I blew out a couple of discs back there. And it was excruciating pain, worst pain ever. Yeah. And I went to the ER, couldn't walk, was in a wheelchair for like a day, couldn't even stand up. It was bad. And then we started yoga to try and because we've been saying forever, as you get older and you're like, I can't pick something off the floor. I should do yoga. And then you never do, right? Nobody ever does, right? I'm not even sure yoga is a real thing. People just talk about it. It doesn't even really exist. Right? It's like going to Mars. Mars isn't a planet anymore. Neither is Pluto. Scratch it off the list, right? So I was on the yoga mat judging myself because I couldn't do the forward fold, which is where you just bend over at the front and touch your toes. And I'm like, if I do that, I'm going to throw my back out. And I was like, you stupid body. How can you not do this? And I'm 46 and I'm like, now I'm 48. Then I was 46. And I was like, how can you not do this? And it's almost like my body just in that moment revolted, like, I got you this far, man. Like, when are you going to be graceful with me? And I started crying because I realized I was making demands of myself that myself could not stand up against anymore. And I realized that we spend decades demanding of ourselves up until ourself hits a limit. And then we have not been taught to be graceful with ourselves. And that's why I love when Jesus says, love others as you love yourself. There's an implication of him going, part of this commandment is that you love yourself. Yes, you're supposed to die to self. You're supposed to carry your cross, but whoever doesn't hate his own life. But there's also an aspect of like, are you still being graceful enough with yourself? Because he's graceful with us, right? If he thinks I'm good enough to be graceful for, why don't I? And so when I think of being in difficult seasons, the first question I have to ask is like, am I giving myself permission to be in a difficult season? Because if I'm not, I'm automatically I'm going to take that energy and I'm going to project it out on the world around me because I can't take being angry at myself. So that's my first part.
And I think that adding to that, the way that it kind of happens as a couple, I think anybody listening understands what it's like to have seasons that are all consuming. It could be all consuming with small children. It could be all consuming with school. It could be all consuming with a project. It could be, you guys are creatives. And so when you're a creative spirit and you've got to be totally in a zone to master that creativity without distraction sometimes. And so these heavy seasons, I think we've learned over time, because it was not smooth. I will tell you that. We've had definite seasons where his season was obviously demanding and asked a lot of me. And then there would be other seasons where I was like, it's my turn. And there's something I've got to surge ahead in. And we realize that there's this ebb and flow in marriage that how do we take turns? There has to be a taking turns. Because if there is a constant person in the relationship that is all consuming of all of that energy and never setting healthy boundaries to the external world, for sure, that spouse is going to wither. And so we have had to have a lot of conversations about taking turns. For me, that looks like seasons of writing books or now me traveling. And so having the blessing of your spouse for these demanding moments, number one, before one of us, obviously, if he has to deploy, I'm like, I don't have any choice, right? But I mean, these other demanding seasons that if he wants to try something and it's going to cost something of me or cost something of us, giving each other the blessing to do that. But there's also been moments where he's come to me and said, I don't think this is wise right now. Or, hey, Corie, are you chasing this thing, that's never ending because I'm over here and it's costing me and the boys more or longer than we thought it was. And so how do we remember that our spouse is for us, not against us, and that we should look to them for the blessing of that? And the blessing helps with what he's saying is then with that blessing, I can not judge myself and allow the Lord's talents and creativity for me to explore that, and vice versa.
Yeah. So. We're big on, we treat our marriage of the scripture that says your sons and daughters will prophesy. So I have an obligation to ensure that I set the conditions so that when it's time for God to speak through her to whoever he wants to, that we have set those conditions of success and vice versa.
Well said.
That's so good.
Well said.
So good.
You guys are doing some really good stuff. I'm so thankful to you for your ministry, but you don't get where you are easily. And I wonder if as we kind of wrap up, is there a story of a hard place in your marriage? You guys are amazing, but the things that make us amazing are the things that test us the most. What's the story there? Is there a place that you think of when I ask that question that you would look back at?
So many hard things.
There's this really weird dichotomy of you saying we're wrapping up and tell me the hard stories, because I'm like, well, how many parts is this podcast going to be? We're now on part 24, hard parts of the Weathers marriage.
I'm just curious. I know we needed to wrap up, and I might even edit that part out. But that's the
no.
Let me start with the first question I have is well, how do you define difficult, or how do you find hard? Because there have been hard moments where it has been demanding. And that's one kind of difficult thing of just getting through those difficult moments and how that, all the hard work that it takes to get through those hard seasons. For the last week, I have been working on several writing projects where even this morning I was like, I'm sorry that I've been useless around the house. Literally I'm still in pajamas, trying to do this creative thing and I've done nothing. But that's different from the moments in our marriage where conflict came up, where we really had to make hard choices, or life was just really, really hard. It tested us with not just difficulty, but spiritual warfare. So
energy with the boys. So here's the thing, the hard moment started somewhere around May 1999.
Oh, yeah, a week after we got married.
And it just has continued.
Yeah.
And the way we've navigated that is we have
authenticity, number one.
Authenticity, transparency, enlisting other people to bounce things off of, taking things straight to God, calling timeouts, knowing what is it? I think it's the Latin phrase is tenet nosc, know thyself. Like the best thing you can do is to explore more and more and more of what is that? Where is it coming from? How do I need to invite God in to shine a light onto that place in my life? I mean, we have different attachment styles. I'm more anxious. She's more avoidant. And currently we're both back in therapy together because we're empty nesters going, how do we want to rewrite this next chapter of life? Right. But the joy is like nothing worth having comes cheap. Nothing of value like doesn't require a cost to be paid. And we had a great couple that worked at Gardner Webb that kind of mentored us in the first few months of our marriage. And they said, you have to treat it like you're in a building and it's burning down and you lock the door and you decide we're not going to threaten divorce. We're not going to threaten this. Like we're going to figure out how to make this work for the benefit of each other.
I love what Matt said years ago. He said, I think the goal of marriage is to get to the finish line. It's impossible to get to the finish line without scars on your heart. Mm-hmm. Like, let's just take this perfection off the table as if we're never going to get hurt or hurt each other, especially on accident, right? Mm-hmm. But he's like, if we can just get to the finish line with as few scars as possible and just not knife fight each other the whole way, scars are okay. So I agree. It has been challenging, but I think the last thing I would say is, when you first get married, you love all the things that are opposite about the two of you. They attract you. And then a couple of years later, they annoy the mess out of you. And then a few years after that, you hate it. Like, it's not just a pet peeve. Like, I literally hate this thing that you do.
Who doesn't put the cat back on? Right. Who doesn't do that? Who leaves cabinet doors open? But if communists. And somewhere, like, especially if you have kids, then the kids are thrown into the midst of all of that. And I also hate the way that you're parenting, right? Like, it's so easy for all of this to get so jumbled up. But if you can just stick it out, if you can just keep trying, if you can just stay humble, if you can just learn to forgive, on the other side of that, you realize that those things that were annoying to you, you actually need them because they stretch you like a rubber band. Like, without him, I would just kind of shrink back to the natural default, but I need him to stretch me. And God has given him me, and vice versa, to stretch us. Doing the math there.
And then beyond that, if you can get past that, then it's not just that we need each other. It actually becomes really sweet. Like, I actually like that about you again. And it's really sweet. And I believe on the other side of that is that it's just endearing. It's an endearing season where I just love who you are and I don't need to change you because there are parts that I needed and parts that I didn't. But man, was this an amazing ride. And I'm so glad that we got here.
It's like waiting for the gray hair to show up.
Waiting for the power alleys.
The power alleys. Yep. Mm-hmm. There you go.
Guys, thank you so much for being on. I know, Corie, you're an author. Where can people find your books or more information about what you guys are doing?
Yeah, goodness. For me, my name, CorieWeathers.com, is my website where there's a couple books. Most of them are military specific. So if you're interested in what the heck is going on with the military and what should you know about it, you can find a book on that. You can find a lot of conversations that Matt and I have had on that site as well, where I have a podcast where he's been on numerous times and we try to share our story more authentically there too.
Awesome. Okay. Matt, thank you once again for your service, man. I appreciate you so much. Thank you both for what you're doing and keep going. All right.
You too. Thank
y'all. Thank you guys for your friendship and for doing this. Thank you.
Love you.
You're welcome. Right. Thank you for being on.
Yep. Together on purpose.
Together on purpose. Boom. That's what we say at the end. So you could say it too. Boom.
Oh, love that.